Let's talk a little bit about closing costs. One thing I've noticed after being in this industry for a little while is we as realtors and real estate professionals, this goes for lenders, appraisers, inspectors. One thing I've realized is that we love to use a lot of lingo that maybe you don't understand. And it gets really confusing along the way for a lot of the buyers I work with. So one thing I've tried to do is really break down what some of these items and some of these words we use really mean for you as a buyer. So I thought, why not make a video? And if my buyers are having these questions, many of you are probably having the same questions. So when you make an offer on a home, there are so many things that you have to think about. And it's more than just how much do you want to offer or how much do you want to pay for the home. We talk a lot about surveys and WDO in our state and appraisal, and you're going to have HOI. So all these things that are slightly confusing to someone who's not in the industry every day. So what I wanted to talk about today in this video is what are closing costs and who's responsible for what. Now every state is different, so if you're not in Florida, your state may be slightly different. However, I have worked and am licensed in 4 other states, and it's very similar. There are only minor differences. So let's talk a little bit about closing costs. And it really depends if you're a buyer or a seller. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to talk about buyer closing costs and what are they. You'll often hear, and I hear people saying, oh, well, I want the seller to pay my closing cost. So closing costs are made up of several things. And for a buyer, these things are, in the state of Florida, the buyer's responsibility. However, when you're negotiating, you can always negotiate and ask for the seller to give a credit or give a partial credit. Again, every situation is going to be slightly different, and this is where my team and I really work to negotiate the best deal for you as the buyer. So part of buyer's closing cost can be your survey, your home warranty, your inspections, things like that. But really, the bulk of it is going to be your property taxes, your taxes for your mortgage, your homeowner's insurance premium. Those are a big chunk of what your closing costs are. Now again, in the state of Florida, each party, buyer and seller, are responsible for their own closing costs. However, lots of buyers often negotiate, especially if you're using a VA loan, for the seller to help offset some of that cost. Because most buyers have their down payment they have to come up with, they have to pay for a lot of things up front. So a lot of times buyers are asking to have those covered. But I want to really get across that these are things that can be negotiated into your contract. A good kind of rule of thumb, if you're playing around with looking at different houses and trying to figure out what your budget's going to be, but you're not quite ready to take the leap yet, you can estimate about 3 to 4%, depending on what type of loan you're using, where you are, what state you're in, but 3 to 4% of the purchase price will be a good number to keep in mind for saving up for your buyer closing costs. Here in our area, insurance, an older home can very easily be $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Your property taxes could be $5,000 or $6,000 a year. Your home warranty, if you're paying for that, that's going to be about $800. Surveys are anywhere from $550 to $750, depending on the size of the land, but you get the point. This isn't to give you a net sheet or to itemize everything, but your biggest expenses are going to be those things, your homeowner's insurance and your property taxes. Now, in the state of Florida, our contract has a spot that you can ask the seller to pay for the homeowner's title policy, or the buyer can pay. So that's going to be a percentage of the purchase price as well. So it could very easily be a few $1,000s. So right there, you've already got close to $6,000 in closing costs. That's not including your lender fees, any title fees your lender is going to charge, your title policy search, liens, if there are any liens you have to deal with, which as a buyer, you usually won't have liens to deal with, hopefully. But that's what we're talking about when we say closing cost. How much are my closing costs going to be? And those are not part of your down payment. Those are generally not financed into the loan. There are different ways you can negotiate with a seller to cover some of those. But I was just talking to a client and I realized I kept saying closing costs, and the buyer was thinking more of like closing fees. The buyer didn't really understand all the different charges that are considered closing costs. So I hope this helps you. I hope this gives you a better understanding of what to consider when you're looking to buy a home. I'm always happy to answer questions. My team and I are here to help. And of course, in real estate, everything is negotiable. And as my instructor said back in the day, within the legal limits of the law, right? We can't do anything that's illegal, but as long as it's a legal negotiation, you can negotiate it. But before you get into the signed contract, it's always good to talk to your agent, talk to your lender, and just figure out a rough estimate of what your closing costs are going to be, just so you know you have enough money in the bank, and also who's paying what of those closing costs. So if you found this helpful, share it with anyone that you think would find it helpful, and check back from time to time. I'm always updating with questions and answers that I'm actually getting from my clients.